They were threatening to primary people.
Yeah.
And they got scared.
So I have a bit of a different take. They kind of had a point when it came to, there's a lot of stuff in here that just does not have anything to do with the funding. That's not the scary part. The scary part is that Elon Musk could just tank it with a few tweets.
Yeah.
That's the scary part, you know? You look tired, man.
I am tired.
Yeah.
After the episode of Precious, that wiped me out.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like first time things to build, like the end screen and all of that stuff, the intro, like all those things. And on top of that, like getting back into like the Spotify account, and like the Apple Music account and all that stuff. And
you're doing a lot of work, and I'm just sitting here rambling on the couch.
Yeah, you just got to show up.
I mean, you could teach me some of the busy stuff, the low IQ stuff. I don't know. I guess I could make your coffee.
You could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have a lot of emails we're going to need to be sending out soon.
Yeah, maybe check some emails.
With that, yeah.
I mean, I'm not very good at checking emails. If on my work computer, I probably got 1,000 unread emails. And, you know, it's just like the ADHD brain, man. If there's a shortcut, the ADHD brain will take it. And you know what my shortcut is? Waiting until my boss is like, did you read that email? Because,
are you good at like sending emails?
I barely send any emails. I mean, I sometimes have to send emails to fiduciaries because they need a form or something like that, but I barely send emails. You know?
Yeah. No, that episode just kind of like wiped me out. There was a lot of firsts. So now like the process is going to be a lot more automated.
Yeah.
Because like the templates and things like that are just like, I've built all of that. But yeah. So yeah, that episode was quite exciting. I'm happy that she was able to come and like chat with us for a little bit.
Yeah.
To talk about, you know, just her life.
No, it's I've been wanting somebody to do something like this to like bring at least local public figures, maybe in the future, even national public figures, just bring them on for a few hours and just talk about their life. Just stories they never get to tell. Like everybody's got good stories. There's always somebody with a good, I mean, I've never met somebody who didn't have one interesting story.
Yeah. And I learned a lot too, like the fact that she was in the military.
Yeah, she signed up for
she signed up for the army
service, yeah.
You know, and all of that and the whole elector thing.
Yeah, that story.
That was a wild story because I guess when she was like, I didn't know how big it was going to be. Mm-hmm. You know, and she's like, when Jane was like, oh, they made these signs, we're doing this thing outside, they made these posters.
Yeah.
That's when she was like, oh, this is actually serious.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly considered a ceremonial thing. Mm-hmm. But in the past, we've had faithless electors where they cast their vote for somebody else. Yeah. And it's possible. It's possible that somebody could potentially just throw the election. So they were talking about this 270 situation or 269 situation. Mm-hmm. It's why there was a big deal this last election to change Nebraska to winner take all.
Because they were afraid of a tie.
Yeah, but no, they wanted a tie.
Oh, they wanted a tie.
Because there was a certain scenario.
It would go to the House of Representatives.
House of Representatives, and they don't.
Which the Democrats.
Well, they don't know. It's not one person would vote for this situation. It's every state congressional delegation gets to vote as one vote. So Wyoming has one congressperson. California has 53 equal votes because California will vote amongst themselves to give their one vote.
But are there more blue states than there are red states?
Not delegations, no. There are more red state delegations because, you know, when you have like California and 53 is the same as 5 here in Nebraska, you know, and Nebraska's entire delegation, 3 Republicans, 2 senators, 2 Senate Republicans. That vote is just as good as the 55 votes in California. It's one of those things, relic from history. I think our founding fathers never envisioned such strong partisanship. Mm-hmm. I mean, they weren't naive, but also they thought, well, there'll be professionals and whoever the president is, the senators and Congress people will have a certain healthy degree of separation, but that just doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I mean, She was the first since Obama won in 2008 to be able to cast a vote.
And the other thing too, I think she's the first black elector Nebraska's ever had.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked back in 2008 because 2008 was the first and only time at the time. And then it's only happened. Now it's at the third time. The CD2 looks like it's going to remain solidly blue. As far as presidential goes, I mean, you know, Tony Vargas lost his race.
Dang.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't know what to expect with that race.
Neither did I. I wasn't paying too much attention until after the fact. And, like, you know, there is armchair quarterbacking, but he was in a very unique situation with his results. This election was marked by a lot of candidates, down ballot candidates, and most of them overperformed Harris. He underperformed Harris. So there was something fundamentally wrong with his campaign, and I haven't done enough of a deep dive to be completely confident, but I think it's because he didn't talk about abortion that much.
You think that was why?
As best as I can tell, like, I have to look more into it, but that's kind of the feeling I got, was he wasn't leaning into that. It's a time when that talking point worked for a lot of down ballot folks, but didn't work for Harris. You know? And I think it's because a lot of voters were able to compartmentalize, you know?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I don't think he's going to run a third time for that seat. I'm interested to see kind of like what he does next. He just continues working in, is he an attorney or does he work in the nonprofit sector?
It might be nonprofit, but I thought he was a teacher at some point. He was a public school teacher. Is that right?
Not 100% sure.
I could look it up.
But I'm curious to see what he does. You know, there's a lot of like state senators and even just people who run for one office and then try to move up to another, and then they kind of just like bow out of politics.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see kind of what he does next. And yeah, you know, Precious gave a lot of insight on just like how things like work too. You know, I think that people really hold, you know, the party leadership accountable for a lot of things, as they should to a certain degree. But, you know, like there's some things that that's just out of their control, right? Like how a candidate runs their campaign and things like that. You know, who decides to jump into a race? You know, they can't really like stop somebody from doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you know, outwardly favor one candidate over the other. And I think like Ashley Spivey, when that was a great representation of what she was talking about. And that story shook me.
Mm-hmm.
That one was crazy.
Wasn't that crazy to me? I've heard crazy ones, I guess, but the public just doesn't understand like the role of a state party. They think the state party is like this shadowy hand that gets to tell people who runs. And so inevitably when there's a super red district that doesn't have a Democrat in it, people drag the party for that. And it's just like, we can't force people to run. Mm-hmm. You know, we can go ask them to run. The thing that the party doesn't do, what I'm told, is they don't lie to people about the situation. There's a district out there that literally votes 80-20 Republican and it never has a Democratic challenger. Why would anybody want to run? You know? And the state party, if somebody came to them and said, I want to run in this district, they would tell them the truth. They would tell them, you're not going to get any resources. We can barely help you. We'll give you a little bit of know-how, but that's it. You know? And that's why people come in all the time wanting to run for a very red district, and they say, this is the lay of the land. We're not gonna lie to you.
Do you think that's gonna change like after Osborne's like whole thing of running completely independent?
Honestly, like, sure. I mean, I kind of hope that some of those really red districts,
maybe not in like a super red district, but what was interesting, do you remember Cindy Maxwell Osachek?
Yeah.
When she ran as this like a pure independent?
Yeah.
You know, and she came in first in the primary.
Yeah.
Obviously, the votes probably split elsewhere.
That race keeps me up at night because she way overperformed what a generic Democrat would have done. She came so incredibly close.
But she was independent.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I don't think your generic Democrat could have won that race or will win that race in the future. Just looking at that district, she could. And she was a great candidate. And by that, I mean she knocked every door. Like, I'm telling you, if you're in a district that's within 5, if you look at a district and it's voted close to 45% for your party, anywhere close to 45%, if you can just raise $30,000 and you're willing to work really, really hard, you can win that race. You know? That's, I mean, everybody thinks it's a mountain, and like, I get it. Like, a lot of candidates are raising $70,000, $100,000, $200,000. It's happening, right? I saw one race, it was $300,000 one candidate got.
What race was that? Both Star?
Yeah. And he didn't, yeah, that's the funny thing, is he didn't even need it, but you know, money begets money. Everybody.
Money talks.
Yeah.
And I feel like people get dissuaded too when you see like, oh, this other candidate raised this much money. It's kind of just like, dang, like I can't even raise a fraction of that. So why would I even try to get into this race? You know, I think that also pretty much kind of scares people off too when they see how much money you have.
Yeah, money is a big issue. And, you know, he was Bostar when he ran first. He was in a very competitive district, and he needed a lot of money there at the end to get himself over the top. And then he got drawn into a very, very blue district.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, you know, at least one of the Republican senators was like, let's draw this guy into a really blue district so we don't have to deal with him spending money everywhere and all this other stuff. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the stories. There's all kinds of rumors about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I hope that an interview like that can let people know that the state party's role is not what people think it is. And I feel like they would be a little less quick to criticism if they understood that the state party is not some kind of shadowy figure in the back calling the shots. It's not, and it's a good reason. I mean, it's a good thing that they're not that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man, I think that a lot of people too are going to get much more eye open on just like the human aspect. Like I was telling Precious in that interview, like when you're a public figure of some kind of capacity, people just feel like you're not a real person.
Yeah.
It's the wildest thing. So it's like, it's almost like people think that you don't have emotions or you don't like, they just don't, it feels like they just think that it's like they just don't think you're a real person. I don't know how to describe it. It's the most like weird thing.
I think for most people, they're just the name in the paper or a
Exactly.
2-minute spot on the local news.
So it's like when, you know, people trash somebody.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, think about like, would you be able to take this from all sides?
I'd be afraid for my family.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was like coming up, like people were like trying to dox my family members, trying to like leak into like where my mom supposedly works or where my nephews go to school.
Yeah.
I remember they thought my nephews were my brother. They're like, oh, their brothers are part of the mayor's like, what was the mayor doing? There was like, was it the Leadership Lincoln like youth thing? I think it was, because I was a part of Leadership Lincoln. They were like, oh, like his younger brothers are even a part of the mayor's like scheme or plot. And I'm just like, okay, they didn't sign up for this. It's like the same thing Precious was saying, like my family is off limits because they didn't sign up for this. Like,
Yeah.
my family members are very private, like citizens. Like they don't like, they're not out there like that. Like they're just not out there like that. So it's just like, you know, say whatever you want about me, whatever. I guess I'm fair game because I'm out here, like putting myself out here. But like, don't try to like post where my like family members work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what are you expecting to happen? You're expecting somebody who's crazy enough to go do something crazy.
Mm-hmm. Or your parents get fired because of the unwanted attention or something like that.
Yeah, like, which they were completely off too.
Yeah.
All the information they got was wrong. But the fact that you guys were digging and like they found a paper from my high school graduation like over a decade ago.
Yeah.
Trying to like, oh, this is his real name. He lies to his followers and blah, blah, blah. Like all this stuff. And I'm just like, don't you have like something better to do? Like, don't you like have hobbies, like a family, like stuff you could be going and doing instead of like trying to dig up information, watching past vlogs that I did on YouTube from like 2018 and 2019 to try to like find out where I worked and what I did. And I'm like, this is crazy. It is what it is.
Man, I am so happy I grew up with those low-fi flip phones.
Well, I did too. I mean, like all of this didn't start happening for me until like 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That was kind of when I started to come more into like public life. prior to that, I just feel like I was a nobody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really glad that my entire youth is not documented on the internet.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw the first person to do a vlog in our town, and I was like, what the heck is that? Just sharing out your random feelings and stuff. Thought that was strange. And now people make millions of dollars doing that.
There's definitely like an old school like type of vlog where it's like, it's kind of just like home videos. They're just like on the go.
Yeah.
But then it got into a thing of where it was just like higher level, higher budget, drone shots, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, even like the last vlog I posted out, what was it? This past summer, it was of me going to New York for that award show. But like I have stuff from like Canada, I still have stuff from Africa, and it's just like in your mind, it's gotten to a point where it's just like if you are vlogging, trying to keep up with the way that people vlog these days, it's like you're in real time directing a movie. That's what it feels like doing shots here, shots there, moving the camera around. It's like there are moments where I'll just pick up the camera and walk and talk, but like oftentimes it's like, okay, I'm gonna set the camera right here, open the curtains, then set the camera behind me, then open the curtains again, so it's like a clean like cut shot of like multiple, make it seem like that. Like I don't know.
But I would. Yeah, just getting back to it.
That gets tiring.
Just getting back to it, man. It's like, that's why, like, if I went to my wife and was like, hey, can I run for office? She'd be like, I don't want you to be in the public. Like, because of our family. And unfortunately, we live in a political system. The way people get elected is more so through negativity than positivity and stuff. So, yeah, when she was talking about, like, how my family's off limits, it's just like, somebody might disagree with you and then try to drag your entire family down. So, like, when she was talking about the elector thing, I believe that if something happens to you before you can cast your vote, the other electors are the one who gets to pick your replacement. But it's like all 10 of them, because we have 5, get to decide. But only 4 of them would be Democrats. 5 of them would be Republican, right? So there'd be 9.
What do you mean all 10?
So because every party, even the Libertarians, they got 5. I don't know. I'd have to look this up. I'll try to.
Oh, you're talking about the other parties included. Okay.
Yeah. So everybody who's picked as an elector, if I remember reading the statute correctly, them and I think the governor's involved somehow gets to pick the replacement. But long story short, they would have picked a Republican for her if something happened to her. And so that's where I was really worried during the election when they were talking about how Nebraska needs to switch to winner take all because we can get this 2069 versus 2069 situation and throw the election into the Senate or the House. But imagine if it was a 2070 to 2068 and Harris had won. That is very frightening. One, all it takes is one person to just change their vote. It doesn't even have to be for Trump. And then you got a 269 situation. Or what if somebody goes on targeting a bunch of electors? If it's that close, maybe.
That's wild.
So I was like, please don't be close. That close. So.
Ball of ice. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Did you have it's like a little plastic thing that does the molding? Yeah. But no, I was really happy with that episode. I'm so happy I get to be a part of this, but it's just like, I just thought that there's such a lane for this. Like people, they'll watch the national shows and then even this show will have a pretty good emphasis on national happenings and stuff. But to be able to talk to local people, people want that. People are going to be drawn to I don't know anything about this person. Oh, well, she was an Army brat. Her first election was 1997 for
Brenda Council.
And see, during that episode, I kind of I've heard that story after she said that, but that's like a whole story. They could go on a rant. Essentially, Brenda Council, she only lost by 700 votes. But you want to know what really swung the election for the other person? Mike McDonald. Because he's a huge union guy, and what I was told, so maybe this isn't accurate, but what I was told is he went to all the unions and used his influence to get the unions to back her opponent. And then what I know to be true is when he was kind of getting in trouble with the parties over his vote on abortion rights and trans rights, he tried to go be seated as a Central Committee member in Douglas County, right? And in order to do that, they got to vote for you to be added to the Central Committee. And it's like, it's kind of unusual for a state senator to want to be a county party, like full-on active voting member. And Brenda Council was there that night. And I'm hearing from a pretty reliable source. Somebody was in the room and is not one to fib with the truth or anything like that.
Wow.
But everybody starts going in on this guy, just ripping him a new one. And then Brenda Council gets on the mic and she's like, "You're the reason why I lost that race. You are racist. And I know you're racist and sexist, and that's why you did that." And then everybody's just killing this guy because they're debating on whether he should be added to the Douglas County Central Committee so he can start talking about why they shouldn't, wave their finger at him. People pile on this guy, and then they go to the vote, and he's like 2 people said he should be a Central Committee member, and it was like...
He made it by 2?
No. Only 2 people voted for him, and there's like 30, 40 people in the room. So then he I can't remember if it was in person or if it was online, but I want to say somebody told me that he just walked out without saying a word or something like that.
I would too.
Yeah, so like that's kind of the she mentioned so many things during that episode where it's like, man, we could go on a 15-minute tangent related to what you just said.
Not one specific thing.
Yeah, because when she was, it seemed like a really benign thing. I worked on Bernie Council's election campaign. She lost by 700 votes. Move on to the next thing. It's like, well, we could take that back and talk for about 20 minutes. But I mean,
that was cool.
That's why she's got to come on later more,
I hope so.
Yeah.
Like I was telling her, I was like, I feel like we're out of the way. And what I mean by that is like, I feel like a lot of the bigger, maybe not bigger, but I feel like a good majority of like people are like in Omaha or in other towns around Lincoln. We have people here in Lincoln, yeah. But like the people who are heavily involved in like the parties and things like that don't like live here.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Omaha pops out those Democratic senators,
Yeah.
That's where it's at. But
I do. I really want Senator McKinney to come on.
He's
a real cool dude.
He's a really cool guy. And I think I've ran into a few times that Senator Wayne and McKinney are 2 most effective Democratic senators, but they're not necessarily the most popular with young progressives.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording.
Yeah.
How they supported the concealed carry and also the school vouchers.
Yeah. I mean,
if I remember correctly, McKinney was talking. It was probably McKinney or Wayne, one of them, maybe both of them talked about this. Just about how, like, if you are black and you're driving and you get pulled over or something like that, like, or, if you have a concealed weapon on you, you're much more, vulnerable to scrutiny and discrimination and hostility.
Mm-hmm.
And so they figured this would be a better way to kind of alleviate that struggle amongst the African American black community.
Yeah.
And also with the school vouchers, if I also remember correctly, like, they've said that we've been talking about how, schools in black communities need more support. They need more funding. They're often left behind and those types of things.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're going to vote for this because we've been saying for a long time and there's been no help. There's been no help to alleviate the situation or help remedy the situation of black schools schools in predominantly black areas in like North Omaha being, left behind and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was really interesting. But did you see that a town in Texas voted to close 5 elementary schools?
No, I didn't.
You didn't see that?
No, I didn't.
So the school board voted to close 5 elementary schools because I guess the funding just was drying up.
Yeah.
You had parents and faculty and teachers and stuff in there crying. And I was watching this on TikTok and people were just like, I wonder how they voted. People kept saying, I wonder how they voted. Because I don't think this was in, your towns like Austin, Houston, Dallas. These are in more like smaller, like rural or communities or suburbs or things like that.
Yeah. I come from rural America, man. And it's unfortunately rural America is dying
So then what? So it's like people were saying, we bought our house because we wanted our kid to go to this specific school. And elementary schools are supposed to be walkable.
Yeah.
Right. So when I went to the elementary school in my neighborhood, it was a block away. I walked to school every day, except when it was like snowing or whatever, my mom would just like drive me over, but I still probably could have just walked. But yeah, I mean, there was no better feeling knowing that school started at what? 8:10, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I leave the house at like 7:55.
Even though I lived in a small town growing up, like I still had to be on the corner to get picked up by the bus at like 7:20.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, go to school, just walk to school. It'd take like 2 minutes to get there or 3 minutes to get there. And
nice, yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. So imagine here in Lincoln, elementary schools are kind of a little bit more spread out. They're in like different neighborhoods. So imagine like 5 neighborhoods. All the elementary schools in those neighborhoods gone.
Jeez. So
now you have to like factor in like a commute time.
Yeah, more cars.
More cars, get your kid to school, things like that, Or here's another thing. This realtor had this interesting take. He was talking about how people wanting to, if you want to sell your house and move elsewhere, you might not get buyer interest because there's no school in the area.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So unless you are, trying to pull in people who don't have kids or don't plan on having kids or are empty nesters and, kind of want to be in a quiet area with no kids around, like.
Maybe. But no, I mean, I heard McKinney, like he explained his position on that. It's like, man, I went to a low income school, so like, yeah, I could feel for it. And it's like, hey, this is his only recourse that he's got. Why don't we come up with a program that lets a public school kid opt to go to a different district, and then, he'd be like, okay, I don't need a school voucher because you can, fill out a form and now I get to go to a new school district and I have the resources to do so. Yeah. So it's public dollars staying in public schools. But we don't ever talk about that. But, I didn't think it was that bad because there was a $10 million cap. At first it was 25.
The school voucher?
Yeah, and so like you see some other red states like Arizona, they didn't put a cap on it, right? Ballooned their budget. Like I don't know if they've repealed their school voucher scheme yet, but they had no cap, and that was just like that was
Arizona has the worst school is the worst state for education. Did you know that?
Worse than Mississippi?
Yeah, I think Arizona's number 50.
Well, way to go, Mississippi.
Did you see Oklahoma when the superintendent? We talked about that on the show, and Oklahoma's 48.
Yeah.
And when that CNN anchor Pamela Brown, really really good journalist by the way, love her. She was like, let's talk about Oklahoma then. You want to talk about Oklahoma? Oklahoma's 48, ranked 48 in education.
He said Trump is going to bring it back though.
He was like, we're at a turning point. Like, so what about right now is the turning point?
Yeah.
When this has been like a Republican stronghold for decades. Like, what is the turning point now?
Donald Trump. We're going to make America great again. So,
there's been a lot of people who have just slowly started to kind of regret their vote. Like you were saying before we started recording. Mm-hmm. What was that thing you read?
People were Googling. Low income people are they some low income people, good portion of them supported Trump, and now they're worried about the social safety net cuts.
Like when they were like, I hope he gets rid of Obamacare, but he better not touch the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah,
that's my health insurance. That's all I got.
If they get rid of pre-existing conditions again, if they get rid of lifetime caps or spending caps, I'm just
curious to like what life was like then.
Oh, but you can watch. I showed you a clip from Sicko. It was the Michael Moore documentary. It's a really sad watch. Let me put it that way. I mean, they had a before that clip. They were talking about how this guy, it was his job. He was an investigator. When there was a big claim that they had to pay out, he would go searching in this person's history to see if there was a pre-existing condition like that they didn't report. Right? What?
A loophole.
Yeah, they're trying to find that. we can deny via pre-existing conditions. And if you weren't telling us every pre-existing condition before we did this policy is fraud, it's null and void, we're not paying for this thing. This was this guy's job. And he was really good at his job. And he was one of those like sociopaths who's just like, yeah, this is awful. This is terrible, but it's my job. You know? And they were telling the story of this one lady, you know, she needed some kind of big treatment, expensive treatment or something like that. And this investigator, this guy specifically, went through all of her history and found out that she had a yeast infection that she didn't report, and that was enough to deny her.
So could
coverage.
like what, allergies, hay fever, things like that be a
yeast infection is pretty common and benign. So yeah, that's what it was like before Obamacare.
So what about COVID? Would that be a pre-existing condition?
I don't know.
Because they have
today.
They have long COVID or people having complications from that, you know, like.
Yeah. I mean, these insurance companies, they're like any other profit-seeking entity. They will try to take in as much cash as they can get, and they will try to send out as little as they can. So if pre-existing conditions go away, they're going to do it. There might be a little moratorium period, but they're like, well, we need more profits.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, because I've heard you say that, like, the ACA wasn't a perfect piece of legislation.
Yeah.
What about it would you have said could have been better?
Public option.
Okay.
So that was the thing that, you know, Obama basically ran on. And even Biden ran on it too. And then as soon as he was elected, he never talked about it again. But, I mean, I've since evolved. But at the time, I was like, public option would be great. You know, people can't find coverage anywhere else, or they just don't like their health insurance provider. Go get on the government insurance plan. But now I'm all for Medicare for all. I don't think a public option would work anymore. But Obama had 59 Democratic senators, and there was one independent senator by a guy by the name of Joe Lieberman. And Joe Lieberman was a senator from Connecticut, if I'm remembering that correctly. And Joe Lieberman took a lot of money from the health insurance companies, right? Mm-hmm. So Obama just really wanted his win. You know, it was a huge piece of legislation even without the public option. So Joe Lieberman basically went to the Democrats and said, listen, I am not voting for Obamacare if you have the public option in there. And that's because the health insurance industry didn't want to compete with the public option if they didn't have to. And so that's why Obama had to drop it. Also, you know, that was back then where he was really, really hell-bent on bipartisanship, and the idea of nuking the filibuster was blasphemy at that time. So yeah, I mean, Joe Lieberman, thank you. He's still alive.
Really quick, filibuster.
Yeah.
Let's do like a quick crash course. Not a crash course, but just like a little vignette on that. Are you for just simple majority votes?
Under the right circumstances, yes.
Such as?
You need to get rid of gerrymandering, and you need to have near universal access to the ballot for citizens.
Okay.
So none of this like, this black community, you guys get one poll, one place to go.
Okay.
And you have to travel 15, 20 minutes. Oh, and also it's low-income area. Some of you don't have cars. You're talking about like everyone just gets a ballot mailed to them. That would be as close as you can get to near universal, in Oregon, which is what Washington they do in Oregon. Yeah. There's several states to do it. I even think California does it. And then there are situations.
See, that's the thing that I'm saying. Like, okay, a big state like California.
Yeah.
55 electoral votes.
Yeah.
Millions and millions and millions of people. Versus like, why can't a smaller state like Nebraska we'll just, you know.
I mean, we have a conservative base, and unfortunately, conservatives. So here's the funny thing, and I want to eventually start talking to Republican senators about this. There's this common misconception that when voting goes up, or when the voting rate goes up, voter turnout, they have this common misconception where they think that Republicans lose. It's not that straightforward, though. Maybe in some areas it is true, but like low propensity voters is what got Trump elected. Low propensity voters tend to vote conservative and Republican. So
why is that?
I have no idea. Maybe because they're low propensity voters and they're focused in on only one topic, and it's the topic that gets through their head. I mean, there's probably many reasons. I can try to brush up on it and talk about it later, but it actually turns out that in more situations than not, low propensity voters who would benefit the most from like all mail, vote by mail, and that sort of thing, who would benefit the most by making it more convenient and accessible, they tend to vote more Republican and conservative than liberal and Democrat. So it's like I want to be able to talk to Republicans and be like, no, this could probably help you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, this state has a lot of conservative people that don't vote. Lincoln, Nebraska is plurality Republican. By Lincoln,
Nebraska or Lancaster County?
Lincoln by itself. So just to give you an idea, Lancaster County is probably even more. But it's a plurality because you got your nonpartisans. But for registered voters here in Lincoln, 41%. And then it's like 30-30 for nonpartisan Democrat, maybe a little bit more for Democrat. But
you know, maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing, right? Like you get your whole thing mailed and your ballot just mailed straight to you.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of people are just like, oh, I didn't even realize there was an election, especially like the midterms and primaries, you know, so that might not be a bad idea, especially because how do people usually remember things like, right? Like when your car needs to be, you know, you need to get your stickers renewed. They send you a thing in the mail. You're just like, oh yeah, I got that coming up.
You got consequences if you don't.
So when you actually have a ballot come, you're just like, oh, instead of like an ad or a mailer or something like that, be like, oh, this is my official ballot. You know, maybe I should look and see what's going on, you know? So
yeah, when it comes to the filibuster, I would be totally fine with getting rid of it as long as you can guarantee that come next election time, people could express themselves accurately. Whereas if you make it hard for somebody from low-income community or something like that, if you make it really hard for them to vote, and you can, and they do, then they can't really express their preference as well. So if you could achieve near universal access to the ballot box for citizens, and gerrymandering was not a thing,
then it's truly the will of the people.
Yeah. It's truly, and like, you have to be able to, whoever the ruling party is, has to be able to be voted out.
Sure.
So it's like, run on your platform, pass your policies, and keep your fingers crossed for the midterms of the presidential election. Majority rules. I mean, yeah, some bad legislation can come out, but then everybody goes to the polls, and they let you know if they agreed with that or not. But unfortunately, in America, you don't have near universal access, and you have gerrymandering. So, yeah, keep the filibuster for now, or pass the John Lewis voter rights. And Republicans, man, like, look it up. You're not necessarily going to be on the losing end if we get higher turnout. That's how Trump got elected. Is he figured out, and it still escapes me, but he figured out how to get people to turn out who wouldn't otherwise turn out. And here's the interesting thing. A lot of them just voted for him and went home. They didn't do anything else. A good portion of them. You know? So it's like, yeah, I mean, I want to sit down and kind of show them the numbers, be like, no, you wouldn't lose on this. Because I want to see high turnout.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see high turnout.
Record turnout. Everybody turns out because then it's like, yeah.
Anyways, getting back to it. Yeah, Precious' story was great to cover. You know, I've been acquainted with her for 2 years. That's when I'm not very long in the tooth in this. Like, I decided to stop being a...
Your little phrases are funny.
That's, you know...
I'm not like in the episode with her, you're just like, yes, people don't want to sign up for their benefits because they weren't Rambo. The phrases you say are just funny.
I don't know. I got some interesting ones. But, yeah. What was I saying?
How she was in the party.
Oh yeah, so I had just gotten involved only like 2 years ago because what I was, and I'm sorry for it now, I was just a loudmouth on Twitter, just yelling at the party. And finally, I just decided, you know what, I should probably actually put some effort into this, come off of Twitter. And then yeah, of course, I was a loudmouth, didn't really understand how a lot of things go, and that's why I give that insight. Like, hey man, the general public doesn't understand what you did, because I was one of those people that was just like, why don't they run people? Why don't they call the shots? Why don't they do this and that? And it's just like, right. They're very limited in what they can do. But yeah, I mean, I've been acquainted with her for 2 years, and I learned more about her in that 2 hours than the last 2 years.
Me too, because I see her online all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I knew her well, but like, there's just like a lot of her backstory that was just so interesting to see, like how it shapes her. And she just has like this aura of like the way she goes about things, the way she moves about stuff, and just uplifting communities along the way, you know, trying to support as many Black-owned businesses as she can, like in everything she does. You know, it all goes back to just like wanting to help the Black community in any way she can. And the reason why she said she got involved was she was voluntold for that one campaign first, but then also it drove the curiosity of like, why doesn't North Omaha vote? Like, why don't more black people vote?
Mm-hmm.
All this type of thing. And then her experience down in Alabama, was it? Did she say Alabama?
I think it was Alabama. She was, yeah.
And
Birmingham?
you know,
She said Birmingham?
yeah. You know, and all of that. So that was a really cool interview. I really enjoyed that. So
Yeah.
what do you think of Jesse's?
Amazing, because, you know, the thing is I grew up in like a conservative environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was a bigot. There's no easy way of saying that. I was against gay marriage. I was against gay people. You know, I was one of those people who thought it was a sin and all that other stuff. Never had my views challenged, right? Until I got to college. And I know some people were going to roll their eyes, but like I became friends with the first, it's not the best way of putting it, but I made my first gay friend and realized they weren't what, you know, I guess conservative media had made them out to be, you know. And then those bigoted views, they evaporated quite quickly. And then only a few months later, I met my first trans person. And that was still like, it was a moment for me that was like, yep, still normal people, you know. And but what I'm always reluctant to do is to like ask about their coming out story, because you never know like how traumatic that could have been. Like I have friends who came out and their parents kicked them out the next day. They weren't even 18 years old.
You know, and I think that people think if you are part of the LGBTQ, you have to take on some kind of activism role.
Yeah, that's true.
Like people expect you to be an activist. You know, like trans people expect you to be an activist, and you know, there's trans people out there who you never would know that they were trans. You know, and they just like live a quiet life and you know do what it do.
That's what you want.
Like
you should have that if that's what you want.
Yeah. There are some who obviously want to take the fight like further and want to be a part of, you know, the fight like Jesse did, you know, but there's some who are just like, you know, I just want to feel comfortable in my own skin and that's it. Like I'm not looking for attention. I'm not looking for XYZ. I just want to live quiet life as a private citizen.
Yeah, you know, I had to explain to some of my conservative family members, like they believe this hype that there are radical trans people out there who are trying to just get a bunch of men in bathrooms and sports and women's sports. And it's just like, listen, I got trans friends. They don't want to bother anybody. They don't want a target on their back. They don't want to be out. They just want to be left alone. That's most of them. That's a lot of them.
Okay, so this is going to be a kind of a funny take. Some people are just like, oh, you're doing this just to sneak into a women's bathroom and sneak on women, or vice versa. It's just like, that's another way of telling somebody they have no game. You don't have no game to get, you know.
I don't know if we put it that way.
Well, I mean, like, so you mean to tell me because I have no game, right? And I can't, you know, like get someone. I have to go through all of this
To assault someone, yeah.
just to go, you know.
Yeah, but it's just like, I don't know why they would, if they're going to do that, why would they wait for semi-public bathroom? Like, and it's just like, you really think somebody wants to go through that transition just to assault women? It's just like, really, somebody wants to do hormone trans and get surgery just so they can stalk women?
I don't even mean the assault aspect when they say they're just going in to spy on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they want to, yeah. So I mean, it's just like I had to explain to conservative family members, and I had to do it delicately, even though they don't deserve that. It's like they don't. But you know, people got to understand that you have to hold these people's hands, otherwise they're just going to double down and shut their mind off to it. It sucks. Martin Luther King talked about that. His letter from Birmingham jail, I think it was. He talked about, hey man, you know, these KKK people, these racists, they suck, but like those white moderates, you know, no. I mean, you need to. I mean, you know the story of Claudette Colvin versus Rosa Parks, right?
Yeah, but explain it for the people who are listening.
So, there was somebody who came before Rosa Parks who refused to, you know, get to the back of the bus, segregated bus. And her name was Claudette Colvin, and she was a young teenager, and she was basically the first one. And it caused a bit of a uproar in the local media, but it wasn't like this big, huge thing citywide and all this other stuff. And I'm not taking away from Rosa Parks. You know, it still takes bravery, but one of the heads of the NAACP got a hold of stories. They learned about Claudette Colvin's story and was like, we need to do this, right? Two big problems. And I don't know if it was this harsh when they were talking about it. She was like black, dark black, right? Claudette Colvin, yeah. And she was also a pregnant teenager, right? And they were like, we need marketing. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. So they got Rosa Parks, again, no disrespect, who was light-skinned, older woman, knew how to play the part, right? And remember, it's not their fault. It's like they know they got to go through this whole song and dance. So a moderate will be like, "Oh yeah, that's rough." But if it, the thinking at the time is if it was a dark-skinned,
it's like the
pregnant
paper bag test.
What's that?
Oh, like if you're lighter, if you're the same tone as a paper bag or lighter.
Oh no, that's not good.
I mean, that like stems all the way back from like slavery. Like if you were lighter, if you were the same shade as a paper bag or lighter, if you pass that test, then you got to like work inside the house and things like that. So I mean, like,
it's frustrating for the civil rights movement to have to go through all this song and dance. But yeah, that's the story of Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks. It's like Rosa Parks, she was a secretary at the NAACP, if I remember correctly, and they were like, she was chosen, essentially.
Are you sure?
Do you want me to look it up?
Yeah. We'll put a pin in, no, maybe not now. We'll put a pin in that in like.
Yeah, if I make an egregious error, either cut it out or correct me on air. Yeah. Because, I do want to be accurate, and I am going off of memory, and people got to admit to themselves memory isn't perfect. But I'm not trying to say Rosa Parks was a fraud. I'm trying to say, look at what they had to go through just to convince moderates to get on their side.
So, I've heard that same thing about MLK.
Yeah.
That, like, that movement was already, like, there were a lot of young people, like, behind and things like that, and they needed somebody to kind of, like, be the face of it.
Yeah, I mean, you need hierarchical. Yeah. You need structure, organization.
Yeah. We'll come back to that. That's interesting.
Oh, the civil rights movement is like one of the greatest pieces of American history. You could spend an entire career talking about it.
It's wild too how just like even after that, yeah, things got slightly better, but there's still just like
still a lot, yeah.
Racism embedded in everything. And it's so wild to see people on Twitter be like, we got rid of racism back in the 80s,
Yeah, the school districts in the suburbs of Atlanta have been.
And I feel like if you say that, then you might have subconscious.
So what you do is you don't yell at them. You got to hold their hand and drag them through it delicately.
I don't have the time for that.
I know you don't have the time for that. But I mean, if you're leading a movement, you got to go through stupid stuff like that.
But I mean, like, okay, so this is the most interesting thing about the internet. I feel like we're all like seeing. I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like we're all so connected to the point where it's like we all experience things together, which we do. But it's like, it feels like we're in okay, here's an example. It feels like we're all in a big high school.
Yeah.
Where we hear about things going on, we know everything that's going on. Like, or viral things that go crazy, like somebody does something crazy in a coffee shop or at a park in New York.
Sure.
And it's like, we all hear about it. It's like, we're all experiencing things in real time because of technology. So it's always interesting thing to me, like, especially during the election. And even after that, anytime there's something big, it feels like we're all living in a big high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we all kind of know each other.
Do you want an extreme example?
But
go ahead. Finish your thought.
But we don't know each other because it's like strangers on the internet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it seems like because we're all talking about the same thing and things like that, it's almost like we're all talking about something that's going on through a high school.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Probably not.
Let me give an example to see if I'm understanding it correctly. Jordan Peele, director of Get Out, when people were talking about the movie and breaking it down, they were saying, notice how like one of the characters who was, got their mind taken over, somebody flashed a camera and then that person snapped out of it for a little bit. Well, Jordan Peele was trying to say in the age of everybody has a camera in their pocket, we're able to see how this community has been like abused and stuff. We're now, we got to see video of, George Floyd, very powerful video. So it's like, there we are kind of seeing a lot more examples of what people have been saying, and they just didn't have the proof.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Even a video that is just straightforward and explicit as George Floyd's murder, people still online arguing about it. They're still saying, well, he had a heart condition. And why didn't he just do this? Why didn't he just do that? So even though we can see like who can argue about that is my thought. Plenty of them arguing. They're looking at coroner reports saying, see, he didn't kill him. He had a bad heart. And it's just like, look, did you see that video?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm talking to them. It's just like, how can you look at that and be like, this guy didn't cause this person's death?
It's wild.
When I saw that, like, I've seen so many like police brutality videos and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's messed up. And then I saw that completely different level. It was just, why don't you just cut his head off on video? So it's like
we're all experiencing these things together,
but we're experiencing them differently. There's plenty of people out there.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So like even in a high school, somebody might hear about people take things different way. It just feels like we're all so much closer because before it's just like, I wouldn't hear about something that happened. Like, let's say 2009, 2010. Did you hear about stuff going on?
Not really.
I think it's before the rise in social media and what it is now.
For sure.
2009, 2010, 2011, even 2012. Like, you didn't really hear about small things here and there. I think when Vine started and people started using Twitter more and all of these things, that's when people just became so much more hyper connected to the point where it's just like, I'm seeing something that's happening in like Nevada or Oklahoma or Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, North Carolina, Washington State, like things like in real time, like because it's like, oh, this video goes viral. Another thing is like trends, right? Like, oh, look at my Amazon wish list. I got this trend. It's like, somebody coming to school and like showing everybody what they got and like everybody flooding to go get the same thing. This is just wild how like we're all so hyper connected.
Yeah.
I guess that's just that's what I'm saying.
So my thought on, even though it feels like we're like hyper connected and stuff and we can actually experience people's plights, I feel like we're probably more divided than ever. And I know that's a bit of a cliche these days, but it's just like when you can watch a video like the George Floyd murder and you can have plenty of people, loud voices on the internet, not necessarily representative of the entire population, out there trying to say that guy, Derek Chauvin, right? Mm-hmm. That guy didn't murder. He had a bad heart. And it's just like, really? So, I mean,
but you can also like trigger things.
Sure.
Did you ever see that Southwest flight where somebody like a piece of the plane like came apart and like this like older lady like flew out and they were able to drag her back in, but she had a heart attack and died?
Oh, man.
So imagine saying like, oh, she had a bad heart or she was elderly. Her flying out of a plane didn't have anything to do with it and people bringing her back in.
Video can be very impactful, yeah.
Like
difference.
Crazy.
So what I'm trying to say, liken this back to MLK and the civil rights movement, it's just like I would have hoped that all of this evidence of people being mistreated would have been enough to help the moderates, finally get there on a lot of stuff, but apparently not. And that's the unfortunate thing, man, is like that's what you had to do, things like that. Like the Claudia Colvin versus
the marketing
Parks.
and everything.
And it's not ridiculous that they did that. It was ridiculous that they had to do it that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're trying to get elected, maybe that's why Tony Vargas made the decision to not really talk about abortion, is because he thought his district had plenty of conservatives in it. Pro-life conservatives, I suppose. But, yeah.
In other news, the fallout between Musk and Trump is imminent.
I mean, I hope so.
Have you seen that? He like posted the other day, like, there's only one president elected. He's still married.
Oh, he doesn't even understand what people are saying, I don't think, because he was just like, Elon can't be president. He's not born here. And it's like, that's not what people are saying. Like, people are saying he's controlling you.
Yeah.
And then it kind of feels like Trump is like trying to say like, well, he can't be elected president. It's like, Trump, that's not what they're saying. But then again, I don't know. Maybe you don't take him for his word. Maybe he's got one of these 40 chess things.
I don't know. I think that's just too much. Like, when you have too many headstrong people in a room, like, it's like there can only be one leader. Yeah. You know what I mean? There can only be one head honcho in this team. Like, there can only be one captain of this ship. What are you talking about, you know? So the whole spending budget, like the fact that we had this unelected billionaire literally tank a bipartisan, it is so hard to get anything through Congress. You know what I mean? Like, so anytime you have a bipartisan agreement where, you know, both parties are not happy, that's a pretty good deal, I guess. You know, if both parties are walking away upset that they didn't get everything they wanted, you probably have a good deal.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's like, okay, like, we'll agree on this, we'll fund the government, you know, we made concessions, we accepted some things, you know, we moved things around, and, you know, we were flexible with this, and, you know, we made adjustments. We're not too happy with it, but you know what? This is what we could come up with to keep the government moving. Let's just spend, let's shake on it. Done.
Yeah.
Last couple of hours, the tweets start rolling in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Trump telling people, don't vote for this. Musk saying, don't vote for. I don't even remember how it was. All I remember was people, they were threatening to primary people.
Yeah.
And they got scared.
So I have a bit of a different take. Like, there were some things in that bill that had nothing to do with continuing resolutions. I get that part. I agree with that part. Why do we need to use this bill to give Congress people a raise? I know it's messed up. I know it's messed up to say this, but like,
isn't it a funding bill though?
What does a continuing resolution have to do with cancer research? I know that's messed up to say, but they kind of had a point when it came to, there's a lot of stuff in here that just does not have anything to do with the funding. That's not the scary part. The scary part is that Elon Musk could just tank it with a few tweets.
Yeah.
That's the scary part, you know?
Right. It's like, that's the fact that, like, these are the proper channels we have. Because who wanted the cancer research in there? Do you remember what party?
It was probably I'm pretty sure that probably was a bipartisan thing, but when the Republicans realized they can't put too many unrelated things in the bill.
But the thing is that they agreed to it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they agreed to it. And I get the thing of where it's like, oh, it's an 1,800-page bill. You can't read through everything. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm just like, okay, give people a little bit more time.
Sure.
I could, and be proactive. Don't be reactive. Oh, shit, we got to fund the government. The deadline's looming. Like, you guys should have, like, had this, like, buttoned up weeks ago.
That's intentional, though, you know?
No, but I'm saying, let's look at, like, how this would, a better way to do this. Have that buttoned up a month or so ago. Send it and be like, hey, party leadership agrees on this.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to vote on it, you know, in a month or two or a couple of months. It's a big bill. It's a big package. Like, we get that, blah, blah, blah. But here, we're giving it to you 8 weeks in advance. So your staff and whoever can read through it and blah, blah, blah. And, like, you know, let us know so you know. But, like, the fact that, like, it's insane to me where it's like leadership will have this deal, be like, shake hands, blah, blah, blah. Send out to the members, oh, be prepared to vote on this bill in, like, you know, an hour or two. Yeah. What?
Yeah, I mean, that just reminds me of the Great Recession and all the bailout bills that they went through, where they literally waited and said, vote for this now, otherwise the economy is going to collapse into a depression. And they're like, I can't read this bill this quickly. Yeah. But, I mean, all the experts and all the leaders were telling them, hey, the economy is on the precipice of generational collapse like you've never seen before. And they were like, well, I guess I got to vote for it.
It's like guilt tripping people. Like, do you really want to be the reason why our country is destroyed? Like,
yeah, that's what they told them. And the thing is, you know, other countries responded differently. They didn't bail out bankers. They bailed out people. Mm-hmm. You know, think about all those people whose mortgages went just belly up. And it was just like, why don't you bail them out? It wasn't their fault this happened, even though people like to make it out to be like.
And they get like screwed over. They can't buy another house for what, like a decade? Like
it. Yeah, I mean, like it wasn't very good situations for them. I mean, they didn't technically do anything wrong. It should have been the bank's responsibility to deny those people. But you know, then the banks were just acting frivolously, and then they just always thought, well, if it goes bad enough, we're too big to fail. The government will bail us out, and they were right.
So
then,
what happened to those individual people?
I don't know.
You were upside down in your mortgage. Your house gets foreclosed on.
No idea.
What happens with that bank loan?
So most people, well, a lot of people, I can't say most people, but now I'm going off of memory here. It's been a while since I brushed up on it. But a lot of people, the reason why they left their homes wasn't even because they were being, their finances went belly up. It was a lot of people, like some of their neighbors were in that situation. Their neighbors' houses were being foreclosed on. And what that does to a lot of people, if enough of it happens, your home value will tank too. And suddenly you're paying a mortgage for a house that wasn't even worth half of what you got the mortgage for. And it's just like, why do that? I'd rather just default, than have. But, I mean, some people stuck it out and their houses, home values rebounded and stuff. But
once you default, you're still on the hook for that money, are you not?
I think so. I mean, it depends on, I think that if they repossess your house, I think that does impact some of what you owe. But in this situation, your house's value went down, but your mortgage value didn't, so you're going to be at a loss somewhere. There was a law here in Nebraska that if you had like a tax lien, this was just struck down the other day. If you had like a tax lien, somebody could come in and pay down your debt. And you had this situation where a guy owed $900 on his property taxes. Somebody came in, paid off $900, and took his entire house away.
That actually happened, like a year or so ago? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, but it just made its way to the Supreme Court, and they just.
No, I'm talking about here in Lincoln.
It wasn't here in Lincoln?
Something like that happened here in Lincoln.
I believe it.
These people created a GoFundMe.
This one was out in Scottsbluff, though. But yeah,
no, this was here in Lincoln.
Plenty, yeah.
Channel 8 did a whole story on it. They started a GoFundMe trying to raise the money for, they're like,
nuts.
And all this stuff. But the people weren't also truthful.
What's that?
They weren't truthful about like, they were saying like, oh, we were making payments and things like this. But then people like pulled up the records of the payments, because that's also public when you pay your property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And they like were behind. So they were saying like, we were blindsided. Like people love to use that. We were blindsided. We didn't know. You did know.
Well,
you did know that you didn't pay your property tax.
Yeah, but I don't think they'd know their entire house could be taken over if somebody threw down a few $1,000s.
Well,
and up until then,
see, okay, I have a different take about this kind of stuff, because since I used to work for a financial institution in corporate America,
mm-hmm.
and like with contracts and things like that in loans,
yeah.
Ever since then, I read anytime like I sign like a financial document or things like that. If I get it, well, I haven't gotten a new credit card since like 2018, but like I also haven't even gotten a loan since 2015 when I got my car.
Sure.
So it's been a long time since I've gotten some kind of like loan or anything like that, like something that has me on the hook financially. And it's like now having the knowledge that I have on how like loans, actually no, that's a lie, my student loans, but those are all federal and I know like how those work.
Mm-hmm.
But like I read everything. I remember when I was young and my mom took me to this tax guy to do my taxes. And he was like, oh, just like sign here. Just sign here. And I was like, oh, I want to read it. My mom was like, just sign it. I was like, I know where I need to sign, but I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Oh, you kids born here in America, you think you know everything, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, I'm not just going to just sign a random thing because this guy and this like,
All right, but hey, you read the iTunes agreement every time?
Maybe not that.
There you go. Well, see, here's the thing.
But when we're talking about taxes, when we're talking about loans, when we're talking about like I owe money back to somebody or something or something like that, like I'm not trying to get in trouble with the IRS. Like I know people who have gotten screwed over by people who did their taxes.
Yeah. What I'm going to say is like some of these contracts, they don't need to be that dense, right? Like I know they have to be a certain amount of dense, but also people writing these things up know that everybody is prone to a certain amount of information overload, mm-hmm. and they know if they make something complicated enough, this person's just going to give up and sign. Like mm-hmm. I have never read an iTunes like agreement. I don't know what's in there.
I would say the last time when I got my car, I bought it brand new in 2015, mm-hmm. one of my cars, and that one I kind of just like skipped through everything and signed.
Yeah.
And just because I knew I was going to refinance before my first payment was due.
Mm-hmm.
So what I ended up doing was this was when it was still called what? Baxter or Performance. Auto, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. I got my Chrysler.
Shout out potential sponsors.
Oh my gosh, I'd love to be sponsored by Chrysler. So I got my my car, signed everything. They were having a promo going on because this was around like November.
Yeah.
So like they had like holidays, like, oh, low interest rate, blah blah blah. So I get my car loan for like 2% from Chase. And then I went to my credit union, and that interest rate was lower than what they offered. But the bank manager there, so cool. Her name is Janet. She taught me a lot about credit, like a lot. So like, shout out to Janet. You know, she helped me and my friends like build credit to the point where they could like buy houses, be in a better like financial position. Like she taught us a lot. So I go there, and she was like, yeah, like I'll have to get approval for this, but we can match this rate just because it's lower than what we offer. But since you already have an offer on the table, you know, that changes it. We can like match that. And so before my first payment was due, I got the loan with her. I refinanced with the credit union, and mostly because like I wanted all like my banking finances to be in one place. Like log in, you see your car loan, your checking account, your savings account, XYZ. And she moved it over, and then I read through that agreement. You know, because I'm just like, I'm already gonna refinance. Let me just get this car, blah blah blah. I'm gonna switch it over before the first payment is due, anyways. But yeah, I read everything, man.
Maybe you'd make a great congressperson. You'd read all the bills. I remember I saw one senator who they had just gotten this. I want to say it was the Trump tax bill. They had just gotten it a few hours before they're supposed to. It's a long piece of legislation, right? And so he just went on like a Twitter live and was just like, "Here, I'm going to try to read this bill to all of y'all before we have to go vote on it." And he didn't get any amount through it and stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean that's the thing is like, but you know, to play devil's advocate here for something, just because a bill is 1,500 pages long doesn't mean it's like this terrible thing. Like you can make a 1-page bill that says give Tommy $1 trillion to do whatever he wants to. Easy. Yeah. Very short. Isn't that great?
Well, I could say like some bills are what, like 500 pages?
Yeah.
Like what's like the average usual?
I have no idea. I could maybe see.
I mean, like standalone bills, sure. But it's like if you're a member of Congress, you usually have more than one. You have a kind of a mini army of staff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you could like divvy it up and be like, okay, so and so you read pages from X to this, so and so X pages from this to this, and if you can like, let's say it's a 700-page bill, and you have enough staff between your DC and your home state office, split that up. Be like, okay, like can everybody read at least 75 to 100 pages this week before we vote on this?
Yeah, I think some
like raise an alarm if there's something that you think wouldn't jive with us or our district.
I think some senators or some Congress people do that.
Coordinate with like your friends in Congress, right? Like if you're a part of like this caucus or like you're friends with like these 5 Congress members and you guys all have the same politics and agree on the same things, and sure, like coordinate with your offices to like split up the reading, like find ways to be like resourceful with what you got.
But what can often happen is like your leadership is just telling you to vote on it. They're just telling you. And sometimes it's not uncommon for both party leadership to be like, just vote on this, you freshman, junior Congress people.
Or
like,
what?
We'll make your life a living hell, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to piss Nancy Pelosi off.
But then it's like, then what's the point? What's the point of having all of these members of Congress, all these members of the Senate, if it's all going to come down to just like, 5 people who get to decide? What's the point?
Unfortunately, factionalism is what it is. Like, it's like, how do you... Yeah, it was just like, think about the type of person who would get to Congress and think the same thing you do and just give up and leave. Well, they're going to be replaced by somebody who wants that. You know what I'm saying? But, yeah, so the scary part isn't that there was a bunch of unrelated stuff in there. I'm okay with cancer research. Fine, yeah, it doesn't. They have a point. It doesn't have anything to do with continuing resolution and funding the government. Fine, whatever. But I don't care in that instance. But they got it removed. It is what it is, and it's just like the scary part is that Elon Musk basically vetoed a piece of legislation from a Twitter account.
That crazy.
I mean, Trump did that too with the immigration bill, but at least he was like.
But the thing is, like, he was a.
Yeah, he's a prominent political figure.
Yeah.
Whereas Elon Musk just posts on X all day.
So wild. That's where we are.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I to get back to the kind of reactions we're having, I can't wait for Jesse's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Scratch that. Actually,
you enjoyed Jesse's?
I enjoyed Jesse's episode because I got to hear somebody's coming out story. That's not something you can go ask every trans person, but she chooses to live out, which in these times, like from my perspective, in these times, it's a very brave thing to do. And she said in her episode, she believed she was doing it for the people in the past. She owes it to the people who did this in the past. And then also, she's hoping she's helping to move the Overton window. Yeah. One day, hopefully in our lifetimes, people will be more accepting of trans people as long as we can keep on helping this movement go forward. And just to reiterate, this isn't about saying trans people's rights are more important than anybody else's. This is saying everybody's civil rights are important. And you can argue about who's being persecuted, but one thing that's pretty objective is who are the conservatives, who's at the tip of their spear when it comes to their whole culture war thing. It's trans people. It's without a doubt. It's right now they are the boogeymen for conservative fodder. I mean, it's just that's it. So I mean, but like I said, if it were go to any other community whose civil rights were being trampled, I would do the same thing, and I would try to bring somebody on to talk about how their civil rights are under attack and stuff, so that people can see that these people are not, they don't have horns and a tail, that sort of thing. So that's the thing I really appreciated the most is like I got to hear her story. It was a human thing. It was captivating because it's something that people wonder about a lot. Like, what did you go through? What did that feel like? I can't imagine what that felt like to go, I'm trans. I want to live my life a certain way.
Yeah, most people kind of just like try to suppress that. Well, I don't know, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I feel like a lot of people would just try to suppress that. It takes a certain level of bravery.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's even a lot of people out there who they come to terms with it. They just don't want to come out because it's like, look at the cleimate, So like I said, it's easy to be a liberal in a blue state. But think about, Cletus in rural Alabama who's trans, and they don't want to come out because that's not a setting you can do that in, So I don't know. It was a powerful story. It was a great episode because I think it's just one little drop along with all the millions of drops that need to happen before you get to the point where people who are skeptical and they are believing the hype in this culture war that, oh, this person is normal. Their story it's captivating. It's moving me.
Yeah.
So you try to keep on telling the stories. I've got a few other friends who are interested in telling their story. They live out. They're comfortable with it.
Really?
But they don't ever. Yeah. Like
to come on the show?
Come on this show. Yeah. I talked to a few people and I was like, hey, here's a clip from Jesse's interview. This is what we're kind of going for here. And I was just like, if you ever feel like you want to come and tell your story, it's important. It's important. Yeah, so it's important, and there are a lot of people who are on the fence thinking that they want to be even though they've come out to all their friends and stuff, they still don't go out in the public trying to say it. But I have at least one friend who's just like, yeah, I'm becoming more inclined to coming on and telling you my story.
Yeah,
like what I went through to figure out my identity.
I think too, like, I don't know. I feel like when people see the format more, they're just like, oh, this isn't a hostile environment. I mean, they have Reese's cups and Hershey's Kisses on the table in front of me.
It's a hostile environment for me, man. I ate a lot of sweets this
You get what I'm saying, though?
Yeah, I
mean,
what I'm saying.
I'm saying, like, we're not here. Like, obviously, like, we would like to debate with people. Maybe not on, like, that stuff. But you know what I mean? Like, different ideologies and things like that, or different perspectives on things.
Yeah.
You know, have, like, some kind of, like, healthy, robust debate on different things. Like, you and I disagree on some things, too. Right? Like, when we were talking about protesting in the Capitol and stuff.
I mean, the thing that irked me most recently is, like, you said they let football be played at a Beyonce concert. And it's just you're like everybody at a Super Bowl party. You show up for the commercials and the halftime show, and you don't even care about the football.
They let those players play football at Beyonce's concert. That was incredible.
I know there's a lot of people.
I'm just wondering, like, who's supposed to play at the Super Bowl this next year?
I don't know. This Christmas, playing football on Christmas was not a thing, and I think this is only recently new. I could be wrong, but even halftime shows for everything that not the Super Bowl, they used to they starting to become more of a thing. Halftime shows at some random game, it feels like.
Dude, I'm telling you, that performance, it felt like I'm trying to think what actual Super Bowl performance was as good as that.
I mean, I really like Dr. Dre. I mean, but that's right in my childhood, you know?
No, I'm talking about, like, okay.
Michael Jackson?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I'm talking more about just, like, the choreography. Like, everything that goes into it. You know what? One thing that I really like about Beyonce is, like, with this album, Cowboy Carter, is that she's uplifted a whole lot of other, like, black country music artists.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she had the singers who sang on, I don't know all their names, but there's a song called Blackbird on Cowboy Carter, and she had them sing with her, you know, when she was walking through the tunnel. And then she also had Shabuzi. You know Shabuzi?
No.
Someone pull me up a bottle of whiskey. They don't mean
that's a great song.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you, when you listen to that song, do you feel a certain sense of sadness? Like, do you feel like the person singing is like, that's what I feel.
Going through it, inflation's rough, life is hard.
Yeah, but they're trying to it
drink away their problems.
It seems like a festive song. I feel like a lot of people treat it as a festive song. It's probably a nice bar song. That's what I've heard at least.
It comes at 2 to the 3 to the 4. That was sampled,
Wasn't it a Chingy song or something?
Yeah.
Like that? Yeah. That takes me back.
That is how you do a sample.
Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
What you doing?
It comes at 2 to the 3. That was good. And then Post Malone was there too.
Was he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not watching
and
this
then her
on principle.
And she had her daughter perform with her too. Like, that
Blue
was
Ivy?
so cool. Blue, she killed it. She did really good. That girl, that
probably
kid is
nice
doing great.
Mom's Beyonce.
But I don't think she thinks of, like, her mom as Beyonce. That's her mom.
Yeah, no, I don't
Which
know.
is so wild.
You ever listen to the Foo Fighters? David Grohl. Apparently, we don't like him anymore because he was a moron. But he used to talk about how his kids don't care. They don't care about the Foo Fighters.
Well, yeah.
Shut
so
up,
it's just
Dad.
like, she even said it in, like, one of her things. She was like, you know, like, it doesn't matter. I could have any job in the world, but to my kids, I'm just their mom. Like, they just want their mom, you know, like, so it's funny. Okay. So Beyonce's sister Solange has a son, and her son is probably, like, maybe early 20s at this point.
Sure.
He was doing a live, and people are like, oh, like, do you talk to Beyonce? And he's like, he's like, yeah. He's like, well, yeah, it's my auntie. He's like, do you talk to your auntie? He's like, yeah, of course I know, like, you know, what you guys think of Beyonce as Beyonce, like, you know, amazing musician.
Yeah.
But, like, to me, that's just my auntie. That's my mom's sister. Yeah.
So, yeah,
like,
that's what we're feuding about right
yeah,
now.
like,
is
you
how
know.
you tuned into a football game to watch Beyonce.
I didn't even tune into the game. I just watched the, like, the actual
okay.
the
Well, I
performance. And he's like, yeah, like, Blue's my cousin, Jay-Z's my uncle. Like, you know, like, do you talk to your family members? Like,
I'm sorry. I'm letting some stuff out. I should probably talk in therapy. Like, when you go to a Super Bowl game, like, go to watch the football, but inevitably everybody there is just to watch the commercials and the halftime show.
but you also understand,
You're
like,
watching the kitchen on
her-
a small TV.
well, maybe maybe people didn't go to the football game just to watch it, probably.
Yeah.
But, like, the people who watch it from home, it's like, maybe those are her fans and they wanted to see her perform.
Yeah.
And Beyonce fans love the visuals. This is the first like live performance of these songs that I think she's put out since Cowboy Carter came out earlier this year in what, February? All that to say,
We have our own disagreements too.
yeah,
come
we
on
have.
the show. I mean, so that's where I really hope our friend Majid would come on, is because, like, listen, I know for a fact that she probably knows more about the Gaza situation than I do, right? I could probably learn something from her. You know, she's probably more in touch with the day-to-day there. And pretty much anybody from this protest movement, I don't even know if that's what they want to be called, the Gaza protesters. I don't know what they say, Nebraska for Palestine, you know?
You can't ignore us, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, listen, we can have a huge argument about what y'all are doing and how wrong you are and just the tactics. But I mean, first of all, I'm sure I could learn something from you because you're just so more plugged in than I am. I'm sure I could learn something. And I agree with a lot of their positions. I just don't agree with, you know, how do you achieve your goals? What are the tactics you use to achieve your strategy? And that's something that I would just sit in here and just, hopefully we don't get into a shouting match. But I know that if Majid came in here and we talked about, you know, if we talked about Gaza and we talked about how these localized protests or how they're behaving and stuff like that, I'm sure I could learn something. You know, there's never been a person I've met in my life that I didn't learn something from. You know?
We're always learning.
You got to be open. You could be a homeless guy. You never know. It teach you something.
I'm telling you. And there's been things. There's this guy. I have a friend. She said there's this guy who is unhoused, I guess. Proper terminology.
Nah.
And
PC.
she was like, he used to be like a million. He used to be wealthy. One thing led to another. People have mental breaks. You know, like, and kind of just go downhill from there. There's a guy who I know. He lived with his mom. They lived a block away. He would ride his bike everywhere. He lived with his mom. I didn't realize at the time because I was a kid, but he had some like mental things going on. So after his mom passed away, he couldn't get a job to pay for the house. They lost the house. He ended up just, you know, living on the streets. Because he was with his mom, like he just wasn't there enough to be able to, like, you know, take care of himself. That's why he lived with his mom until he was in his like 50s. You know, so
yeah, but what happens if his mom goes away? You know,
she passed away
on the street.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's what I'm saying. His mom passed, and then he ended up having to live on the street because he couldn't, you know.
Yeah, and it's just like you don't need to have a traumatic childhood to have mental health issues, and so it's like you can learn something. You can learn something from everybody, and like if somebody came in here and we couldn't disagree on anything more, I'm sure I could learn something still.
Sure.
So I mean, I think that's the great thing about this show is we're gonna have all kinds of people come on, and we've already had 2 great interviews so far, and you know,
have a lot more lined up.
Yeah,
well, maybe not lined up. We got like people who have agreed to come on, so we got to like line those.
Yeah,
soft.
We're trying to work on a few, but you know, I just feel like it's one good interview is gonna beget another one, and just so on and so forth. Yeah, and then people like I know we have to compete with like the national talking heads and stuff like that, but you know, nobody's gonna be able to offer like what a certain state senator thinks besides us. Unless somebody else tries to, you know,
plagiarize. We know Nebraska.
Yeah,
we know Nebraska politics.
Yeah. And it's just like nobody's going to be able to offer that much to you.
That kind of insight, yeah.
And it's like my fellow liberals in blue states, you need to look at what it's like for us here in these quote unquote red states, you know? Like
have you ever heard somebody say like a Republican in California is pretty much like a Democrat in Nebraska?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Maybe it's true. I mean, I mean,
it's just like the way like these labels are perceived in different places.
Yeah.
Right. So like what somebody was saying was like a Republican in California is probably a little bit more liberal than a Republican in Nebraska or a Republican in like Oklahoma or like, you know, those kind of states.
Yeah.
You know, and like a Democrat from Nebraska is probably like
they're pretty conservative actually.
In comparison to like a place like New York or California. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's like that's the wildest thing about American politics. It's just like, depending on where you live in the country, you might not actually identify with that. Like,
yeah. I mean, I feel like Democrats for the most part, when it comes to like a social issue, like gay marriage, trans rights and stuff like that, we're all pretty much in line. Most of us, right? We all pretty much support gay marriage now. Wasn't always that way, but I'm pretty sure most every Democrat nowadays supports gay marriage. And that's like, we're pretty good on social policy. We're pretty good together, Democrats. When you get to economic policy, that's when you start seeing everything going which way and stuff, So like some of our Democrats here on economic policy, quite conservative,
Sure.
So it's like those Republicans in California, most of them probably don't care about gay marriage anymore, But here you might have a Democrat, or you have plenty of Republicans, especially the politicians, who don't want to see gay marriage.
Do you know where it also bleeds into different like cultural like aspects too, like different like communities too? Like gay marriage is not supported in the Sudanese community.
The older Sudanese community, right? Like what about younger folks? What?
I still think
for the most part they're opposed to it.
I don't 100% know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that like they're 100% on board, like whatever.
Yeah,
I still think there's like the stigma.
Would you say that maybe the younger Sudanese community is more liberal or moderate than when it comes to social stuff than the older Sudanese community?
Oh, for sure.
That's what it feels like in Hispanic
community.
community.
If you like social stuff too is kind of like a wide net, right? Like traditional, like the traditional way about going life, like, like you got to get married, aspire to marriage and having kids and things like that and all this kind of stuff. I feel like a lot more, kids in the South Sudanese community or Sudanese community are much more like focused on, my dreams and my aspiration and breaking out of societal norms.
Yeah.
So I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always thought that if you want to reach like a conservative Hispanic person, it's like you got to reach through their kids first. That's what my idea was. And I've always wondered if
what, do they listen to their kids more?
Well, I mean, somebody's going to listen to their kid more than me. My uncle's going to listen more to me than some random canvasser at his door who might believe the exact same stuff I do, But, I've always thought if maybe that was the same in different communities, but, nothing's one-to-one there. But, I'm looking forward to more conversations, and I've gotten to the where I realized that I can check my ego because I can learn something from everybody. So yeah, I'm hoping to have more conversations like that, and I was really happy to be a part of it. So yeah.
Anything else you want to chat about?
Oh, I don't know, maybe later this week. Plenty of stuff to cover this week.
Nah. Next week on the Jazari Qual Show, we're kicking off 2025 with a powerful conversation you won't want to miss. Maurice Jones, candidate for Omaha City Council District 2, joined us in the studio to discuss the issues that matter most. From housing and infrastructure to economic disparities and community growth, Jones broke down his vision for North Omaha and how he plans to lead meaningful change.
It isn't about installing your friends into political office. Voters can see through that, and what voters are going to resonate with in this election is going to be the message. And our message is fundamentally different than everyone else's message.
Catch the full episode on our YouTube channel this Monday. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. And if you prefer to listen, we got you covered because the podcast audio version will be available wherever you stream your favorite shows. Start the year with inspiration, insight, and solutions, only on the Jazari Qual Show.